Alright, as you can see, I've got my plan sheet taped down to the table, and I got my pile of ribs. I got some spars that we're going to be putting down, and this line here, good way to see from back here, I guess, would be the wing dowel piece. So this is your center spar, this is your leading edge, and back here we have your trailing edge, and we have your airons. So all we're going to be putting together right now is just the wing, so we're not going to be dealing with the airons at all, it's just the wing right now. And the first thing you want to do is lay down your wood across the center spar here. It's tough to get the whole thing in the frame. So we're just going to lay your whole spar down. If you've got 4-foot pieces, you're going to put the whole thing together. I only have 2-foot pieces of the spars, 1/4 inch spars that we'll be using. So I'm going to build the same way you were going to build with a 4-foot piece, only I'm going to build it with 2-foot pieces. So the first thing you want to do is, first of all, if you're using the 4-foot piece, go ahead and just lay your wood right down on the plan sheet. It's just as easy. I'm just going to put the 2 sticks together, but we're going to do half a wing at a time. The first thing you want to do is mark your rib locations. So just go ahead and mark your 2 lines for the thickness of your rib, and then you're going to put a center line, a center line, a center line, a center line, well, an end line. You don't really even need to do the end. You're just going to put the, when you get to the very end of the piece, you're just going to make sure that the end of your rib is flush. Flush where it sticks out a little bit. I think on this model the sheet's a little larger than 4 foot, so just make your ribs flush on both ends. But everything you do, you want to start in the center and work your way out, and that way you'll have a perfectly uniform wing. So anyway, after you get your marks, take your ruler and go through, and I'm using 3/32 wood for my ribs, and I'm going to just put it on the center line, and because I'm going 3/32, I'm just going to go 3/32 from the mark on both ends, so I'm going to split the difference basically. So it's 3/64 that I'm going to need to go on each side. So basically a 16th on each side would be good. Just give yourself an 1/8 and you just set your rib right down in between it. Or you can just use this rib here, line as that, and then just go 3/32 towards the outside, 3/32 towards the outside, and so on down the thing. Now a good way to get all your lines transferred is to take the 3 sticks that you're going to need. You're going to need one here on the bottom and another one on top. You're going to have one in the back. If you're using a 4th one up in the front, then you just take your 4 stick and put that in the front. And again, we're working everything from the center. So take your front spar and put that down, and lay your other spars right down behind it and working from the center. And then you just want to shore up one end. You want to make sure everything is perfectly flat and centered from the center out. So you can either hold them together with your hand or if you want to clamp it somewhere where you're not going to put the square. Now it's clamped nice and tight. You don't have to worry about them moving. You can just take your speed square, push them right up against it, and then mark all your lines straight down. Nice light line. Go to your second mark, and then you got a spot where your rib's going to fit perfectly. So you're going to go right down the line and do all of them. And do this on both sides. You're going to do it on the left side, you're going to do it on the right side. And you can release the clamp. On your tail piece, this is why the center lines are nice and important. I found the center and then drew the center line in. So when I go to hook up my fins later, I'm just going to take my center line and I'm going to stick it right wherever my notch is, wherever my notch. And there's where the rib's got to go. I want my center line to be on my center line and in the notch, and that's where I'll glue it when it's laying down and up in the air, because you're not going to be able to glue this flat. So that's why I like to have the center lines on my ribs. Now on my nose, I'm doing plan B. I'm using a triangular stock, and that's what I'm going to use for my nose piece. So I need to get the marks for my ribs as well in there. And the best way to do that is to just take your triangular stock, lay over the spar that you marked. So you've already marked this piece. Take your triangular stock and just make sure, once again, you're flush with the center. That's what we want to be working with. And once you're flush with the center, just transfer the mark onto your triangle on the flat side of it, because that's the side you're going to need to see. You're going to want your center line across your triangle too, so I went ahead and measured and got my center. and then connected the center all the way across. And this is a 2-foot piece. If you got a 4-foot piece, of course, you'll do the whole thing. And then once I get my marks on there again, so I just use the speed square to transfer and make my nice straight line, and that way I know everything is nice and straight. And on the front of the spar, or the rib, you'll see a center line. And when I go to put this on, of course, the center line will meet the center line and be right in the middle. And that's how the front of my ribs are going to look when they're on plane, and they're also going to be up in the air, which is why it's helpful to have the center line here and the center line here. It takes nothing to put the two center lines together, no measuring needed. So that's what I went and did. So mark all your triangles, mark all your spars on the left side of the wing, and then do the same thing on the right side of the wing, and then you'll have it all set up to go for what we're about.